Dude, I can't. Dude, I mean, like, old grandmas being scared of the gays is nothing new, even in any country, if I'm being completely honest. But the idea, like, the word she used, terrifying, terrifying. Like, are they really terrifying? Is it that scary to see a guy kiss another guy? I'll never understand it. So, I also wanted to talk about Russia's continued decline into homophobia, not only as a cultural standard, but as a legal standard. Many of you know about the gay propaganda laws that were passed in Russia a while ago, which criminalized like the display of like homosexuality to young children. That means like in children's media, or like, you know, being a gay teacher, stuff like that. Like trying to stop gays from being around children generally, and from children from, you know, generally knowing about homosexuality. The idea being that if kids don't know about the gay, then they can't be the gay, which, I mean, that hasn't ever worked in a single society that has ever tried it, but maybe Russia will be the special case where it does. Well, anyway, Russian President Vladimir Putin, after it was signed by the Duma, has signed a law that expands those anti-LGBTQ propaganda statutes. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed and expanded anti-LGBTQ plus legislation on Monday. The law was originally introduced by the lower house of the Russian legislature in October and banned so-called propaganda of non-traditional sexual relations for both adults and minors. Before it was minors, now it's adults, said a statement by the State Duma. The original bill passed both the lower and upper chambers of the Russian legislature before being signed into law by Putin. All positive depictions of the LGBTQ plus community in literature, film, television, online, and more will now be illegal in Russia. All depictions. It is now illegal to be queer in Russian media, to be gay, to be bi, to be trans. If you are under the LGBTQ plus label, you can now only have negative depictions in literature, film, television, and online. That means if you're online in Russia and you're like, hey guys, I'm queer and you know, that's just who I am, it is what it is, that's illegal. If you want to make a show and have a gay character who's just gay and not in a negative way, banned. You want to have a film and just a gay character on the side, he just says hello, banned. In literature, you want to write a book about a gay character as a confront, banned. All of it banned. Now, I gotta say that it's weird that we consider the positive representations of LGBTQ plus people, that's gay propaganda. But positive representations of straight couples, whether it be in Disney princess movies or a million different children's shows that show straight couples, or for adults, like romance programs which show straight couples like interacting, and married couples and you know, wedding rings and wedding bands and stuff like that. All of that, you know, all of that happening, that's fine. That's not propaganda. But when you add a rainbow flag to it, when you make it queer, when you make it gay, when you make it homo, all of a sudden, magically, it's worse. It's now propaganda and it needs to be banned. Who does this protect? Who does this help besides just hurting LGBTQ plus people, going to lead to the further isolation of queer youth and make it more difficult for the few lifelines that queer people had in Russia? You know, if you're queer in Russia, you don't have a lot of lifelines. You can't really go to your school and talk to them about it. You talking to your parents, I mean, the vast majority of Russian parents have very negative views of homosexuality. You can't go to like government counselors. So for a lot of them, these online communities and this representation they could import through like books and film and stuff like that, and in the communities that formed around that, for a lot of them, that was like all they had. These online communities that could comfort them and give them, you know, support and possibly raise money for them if they become homeless, because, you know, homelessness in the LGBTQ plus community is very high due to their exclusion and social isolation in society. Now that's gone. If you have like an LGBTQ plus group online, you've got to keep it like secret. You can't even advertise it anymore if it talks about queerness in a positive way. This is I mean, it was already bad before this law. But like, this is really bad. This is really bad. It is now illegal to be gay in any form of Russian media. As long as that gay isn't, hey, look at me, I'm an AIDS-ridden, degenerate cum guzzler, and I want to destroy Russia. That's the only way you can have queer representation. And the purpose of this is to basically further demonize queer people. What this will lead to is the only representations that people are going to see of queer people in Russia are going to be on TV in the most demonized, horrific, backwards ways possible. And that's going to reinforce what they've already been told by the government and by other institutions of what to believe about queer people. Because representation has a real impact on how people view queer people. I don't like Modern Family and the gay couple that was on that, and there's been studies on this, had a tangible impact. Just these queer people just behaving normally, not like, oh, look at me, we're so gay out of, just behaving normally, just raising a child, conducting themselves normally. That had a positive impact in normalizing queer people and gay people to the majority of Americans. Because they were just like, oh, they're just like any other family. Oh, except it's two dads. Okay, well, I thought it was a lot more evil than this. Okay, I thought it was satanic or something. Okay, well, I guess it's not that bad. It had a tangible impact. Russia knows this and wants to stop it. In fact, they want it to go in the other direction because they didn't just ban queers in media, period. They banned positive depictions, meaning that their will and grace, their Modern Family is just gonna have like the most backwards horrific examples of queer people in media in order to further reinforce these negative stereotypes. Gay people in Russia already face so many problems. The last thing they need now is to be furtherly socially isolated, but Putin doesn't care. And when you look at all this footage from the war in Ukraine of Chechen commanders talking to their soldiers saying, and Ukraine is the shaitan, is the trans people, is the gay people, they're gonna make your kids gay. Anti-LGBTQ plus ideology is almost becoming a pillar of Russia's belief system, of the Russian government's belief system, of what they stand for, and a pillar of their propaganda arm. Because if they can continue to portray queer people and gay people as satanic and evil, then as Ukraine continues to become more and more LGBTQ plus friendly, with Zelensky proposing civil partnerships for queer people and non-discrimination protections being introduced for trans, bisexual, and gay people in 2015, and the popular sentiment in Ukraine is moving closer, more and more favorably towards queer representation, it's going to be easier to convince them that they are the shaitan, which means devil. They are the devil. They are Satan. They are evil. They are all the things that we said they are. Because look at them, they're queer. It's becoming an integral part of the Russian propaganda machine. Now, what I'm really interested in is how Russians are reacting to this. And so one of my favorite Russian channels, 1420, released a video talking to rural Russians and Moscow residents about the LGBT ban in Russia. What do they think of it? Do they support it? Are they against it? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of pretty, to put it lightly, problematic opinions expressed in this video. So if you're not ready for it, I understand. So let's watch. Let's watch this.
Смотрите, вот сейчас у нас, вы, наверное, слышали, приняли закон о полном запрете пропаганды ЛГБТ. Как вообще к этому относитесь? Плохо?
Да.
Почему?
Меня никак не мешает ничему.
Wow. You know what? First response, pleasantly surprised. Woman asks him, what do you think of this new law banning the LGBT propaganda? And he says, I have a negative perception of this law. They don't even bother me. Why would the government come up with this law? Based first Russian. The thing is, the reason why I show these videos and why I am so interested in this type of reporting and these kind of on the ground person to person interviews is this is not the type of stuff that's probably going to make its way to CNN and MSNBC, and that's not even necessarily because of some nefarious intent, but they got to please advertisers. And so they don't have time to put every little small interview like this up there that might be of interest to people like you and me. And so that's why I like to cover this, to make sure that you guys remember that not only are there Russians in Russia with dissenting opinions, and, you know, Russia has people of all across the political spectrum in it, and, you know, just because they're Russian doesn't mean they believe this, but it's, I think, also important to get that on the ground perspective.
Зачем этот закон принимать и зачем, в принципе, трогать людей, которые не традиционные?
Любой запрет, в отличие от какой-либо действия по пропаганде чего-либо другого, является, скажем так, отрицательной инициативой. Потому что если хотят пропагандировать, скажем так, другой образ жизни, то надо пропагандировать образ жизни, а не запрещать другого.
Next person said, like, I think it's bad as well. Why they should basically promote, you know, the way of life the government wants to see, not ban the other option. You shouldn't ban people's options. But then he starts sliding into it. It's one thing to ban propaganda among children. It is another thing to ban it among adults. Because again, like, because the thing is, like, banning propaganda for children, that's like a good thing in your head. But when you realize it's just like, straight people are allowed around to children, queers aren't, then you realize it's a double standard for no reason. But when you just hear the word propaganda for children, like, immediately, obviously, like, propaganda has a very, 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 like, negative connotation, and it's easy to sell.
Пропаганде среди детей, а другое дело пропаганда уже среди взрослых.
Вот сейчас хотят...
Ребенок – это ребенок, скажем так, ограничивать поток информации, его стоит, но не только в таком плане, ну тогда же и пропаганда вообще как бы чересчур сексуализации и всего прочего. Если среди взрослых, то ну, как бы считать, что взрослые настолько тупые, что сами не поймут, ну, это глупо.
Я не могу говорить, как я к этому отношусь.
Почему?
Потому что моя точка зрения не совпадает.
Oh, the next person. Dude, everybody so far has been based. The third person here says, I cannot tell you my view. The woman says, why? Because my point of view does not coincide with that of the state. He's just being blunt. Like, look, I can't tell you because I'm afraid of being arrested. Next woman, it's so silly. Look, dude, when you go and you talk to people, I know that people have this like idea of the Russian in their mind, but not all Russians are the same, man. And oh my God, Dylan, revolutionary idea. People are individuals. But like this seems, so far the video seems to be showing a lot of people. Now that's not saying the majority of people in Russia say this, just that like these people exist in Russia. These people who have their senses about them and understand, like she is saying, it's so silly.
Ну, в плане, смотря, что они считают пропагандой.
Ну вот то, что, например, там в книгах, в фильмах, любовь, там, мужчины к мужчине.
Hey, Al Durgas, thank you for the Prime Gaming. Least homophobic Russian watch. True. Thank you for being sub for 9 months with another Prime Gaming. If anybody else wants to drop a primer, a subber, a dono, anything, I would greatly appreciate it. The thing is, again, the majority of Russians are homophobic. That's not even a question, right? But when you're talking about like the Moscovite or the city dweller, like there's gonna be more diversity in opinion there. When you get into the rural communities, it's not always that way, but it's gonna be a lot more difficult to find openness to queer people.
Показывается. Это и есть пропаганда, по их мнению.
Ну, я не нахожу в этом пропаганду, поэтому я против таких вещей. А меня потом за это не отчислят?
Вряд ли.
Надеюсь, нет. Надеюсь, нет.
By the way, she just says after that, after saying it's silly and it's not propaganda, she asks, like, am I gonna get expelled for saying that? I hope not. Totally normal functioning country. Next person as well. Everybody so far is against it. That's pointless. Why so? They simply forbid ordinary people to show their position. They simply limit the person into freedom. Now that they've stopped talking to the, you know, the city dwellers, now this right here, this is a rural location in Russia. So now we're moving away from, like, you know, the city dwellers, you know, the libtards, as we would say. Now we're moving into the countryside, the real Russians, you know? Now we're into the countryside of Russia.
Опрос вот снимаем, решили у людей узнать, как они относятся к ЛГБТ. Это геи, лесбиянки, трансгендеры.
О, Господи. О, Господи, скажи. Вот так отношусь.
Слышали вообще, кто это?
Куда меркать?
Terrifying, terrified.
Кому это?
Dude, I can't... Dude, I mean, like, old grandmas being scared of the gays is nothing new, even in any country, if I'm being completely honest. But the idea, like, the word she used, terrifying, terrifying. Like, are they really terrifying? Is it that scary to see a guy kiss another guy? I'll never understand it.
Такое в голову могло прийти. Ой, страшно стало.
То есть вы хотите сказать, что президент правильно сделал, что он подписал указ о запрете пропаганды ЛГБТ,
Конечно.
Да? She approves of the ban.
А как думаете, вот почему люди такими становятся?
How do you think people become gay? It must be a mental disorder.
Психические.
Ну, а как считаете, сколько людей...
How many people like that do we have in Russia?
Ну, я бы не сказала, что... Ну,
How can I give you a number?
Откуда я могу
Probably
точно
just a
сказать
few.
вот так? Единицы, наверное, такое. Это же нормой не может быть. Это же ненормально, а ненормальных стороной.
Знаете, кто такие? Слышали о них?
Я не слышу.
Ну, это геи, лесбиянки, это люди, которые пол меняют.
А я эти закон не слышал. Не знаю.
Ну, а сами как вообще к ним относитесь?
Конечно, отрицательно отношусь.
Да, почему?
А зачем? Не.
Dude, I like this. This guy's great. He says, I take these gays negatively, of course. Why? Why would I need lesbians and gays? What does that even mean? Why would I need lesbians and gays? Why do you need anybody? This would be like saying, like, how do you take, I don't know, like, how do you take left-handed people? Negatively, why? What use do we have for the left-handed? Like, I want something practical. Maybe if there's like a gay tractor, then he'll be in favor of it. I don't know.
Нужны лесбиянки или эти гои-лесбиянки. Зачем они нужны? Тебе плохо живется.
Ну, они встречаются ли вам вообще? Сделали ли вам? Мешают ли они вам?
Ну, я сейчас здесь я сейчас не знаю.
He said, have you ever met a gay? You know, asking this guy who takes them so negatively if you've ever met one. I don't know any in our neighborhood. Maybe there are some hidden gays. They're like in the underground. They have like an underground club scene in this little rural Russian community.
В нашем дворе, может быть, есть тайком, может быть. Я не знаю. Я не могу фамилию назвать. Я не могу.
Правильно, давно пора надо было, конечно.
That's
давно.
about time.
Вот насчет Украины вообще вот у нас что-то слишком.
Dude, oh my god. So the question is about the LGBT. Dude, this is one of Putin's guys. And when I say this is one of Putin's guys, this is Putin's like most diehard guys. This guy right here, this is how you know he's diehard. Because he's asked about the LGBT propaganda law. He immediately endorses it, gives no explanation, says it's about time we banned gays in TV, and then immediately, just for no reason, just deviates and starts ranting about Ukraine.
Конечно, давно. Вот насчет Украины вообще вот у нас что-то слишком мягкосердечные стали. Вот нас не уважают. Мы что-то мямимся. Вот это не только я говорю. Правильно? Вот жесткие меры надо принимать. Ну как? Вон наших солдат сейчас расстреляли.
So it's like, what do you think of the gay propaganda law? I approve, of course. Anyway, we need to bomb Ukraine harder. We need to take drastic measures. We've been too soft on them as mass graves are unveiled all across the country. Dude, it's not even like an interview about Ukraine. It's just like completely separate topic, but he just wanted to talk about it for whatever reason.
По телевизору показывали, нет, волосы дымом стали. Ну как так? А мы слишком телимся, мягко говоря. Извините за выражение, но я хочу сказать, тоже зверствовать, но жесткий закон надо принимать. Ну как-то... Вот, войны, как говорится, не было такой. Вот, кончилось, как говорится.
He basically says that if we would go harder, then the war would be over soon. The problem is, like, Russia has been going hard. They've been going hard since the start. That's why there's so many mass graves and civilian deaths and war crimes in Mariupol. Even occupation authorities admit that the majority of the buildings in Mariupol are not even usable anymore. Russian occupation authorities said Papanza, once it was occupied, literally that city, like, no building is usable. And they're just gonna demolish the whole city. The city basically no longer exists. Like, it's just like this, like, it's just not usable. I don't know, like, how much harder they could go. I like, what's the new thing that needs to be, because this feels like, you remember when, you know, when like when we would hear from like a progressive and like, what should Biden do? Right? And they want Biden to do more. And remember, I'm a progressive, so I'm saying this as a self-critique of our movement. And the response I would get is, Biden needs to be harder. He needs to go harder. He needs to be more aggressive. And I hear these words, they're like buzzwords, but like, what is he, how will he be more aggressive? How will he, you know, go harder that will have a substantive impact that is different than what is currently like occurring?
Быстрее, тем лучше.
Ну, вам кажется, что таких у нас в России очень много стало, да?
Ну вот сейчас у нас, как тебе сказать, мы народ терпеливый, кажется, россияне, вот немножко из-за этого, не знаю, вот. Ну, сами, с одной стороны, миролюбивые уже, не только, не мы же войну начали. Вот он...
Dog, he asked him, like, do you think there's gays in Russia? Like, how many of them do you think there are? And he immediately, after doing the rant about, you know, the how he needs to bomb Ukraine harder and go harder, he immediately says, look, we are a peace-loving people in Russia. We're not the ones who started the war. He's not even listening to him. He's not even responding to the question about LGBT people. He just wanted to rant about the war.
Не только мое мнение. Не надо было вот столько лет ждать, чтобы Украину вот так вооружали, как еще, может, не 100%, я говорю, но все равно вот. Украина, фашизм.
Как люди относятся к ЛГБТ? Вообще знают, что это такое?
Что-то... Это геи,
Да,
лесбиян.
вот эти. Как к ним относитесь?
Я отрицательно. Как-то... Я не знаю.
А почему отрицательно?
У нас воспитание было такое.
Ну, может быть, вот в ваших кругах кто-нибудь...
Okay, she says she takes them negatively, and she cites her upbringing, that she was raised that way. It's pretty common.
Подался вам?
Я не знаю, нет. Я уже на пенсии долго лет. Спасибо.
Все, спасибо вам.
I'm a pensioner. I don't know such people. Gays don't get pensions. Gays don't get old.
Как они относятся к ЛГБТ?
Отрицательно.
Почему?
Это, знаете, ЛГБТ — это конец
LGBT is the end of civilization.
Да.
Wow. I didn't know that we, Chad, I didn't know I was such a bringer of doom and dismay and destruction. Who would have thought? I know people always bring about like the collapse of Rome and the collapse of Greece. Like, oh, once they had homosexuality, that's when it's collapsed. There are a million factors that brought the like Rome like down when it comes to like corruption and like and like civil war and strife and all these issues. None of them were butt fucking. Like, if I'm being completely blunt with you, there wasn't like a time where like the guards at the gates of like Rome, the city of Rome, were like too busy having like anal sex that they like left the gate up and like the barbarians came in and took the city. Like that didn't happen. Not to mention, many of these civilizations we're talking about like have some like form of like homosexuality being like openly practiced to some degree for like hundreds of years before these collapses occur. So did it just take hundreds of years before it to kick in and degrade slowly? Or why was it not faster and could be more easily explained through the later political crises that these like civilizations would go through? I never liked the civilizational argument about homosexuality. I always thought it was the weakest.
вообще
Я
знаете?
не знаю, что такое ЛГБТ.
Это вот геи, лесбиянки, вот это вот все.
Я против.
Объединение.
Это ненормально, это чокнутые.
Но вот если
Не
у вас,
сидом у них.
если у вас была кнопка, на которую вы нажимаете, и все они исчезают.
Ну, сразу бы нажал бы.
Все, спасибо большое.
Чего?
Как к ЛГБТ относитесь?
ГБТ?
ЛГБТ. Вот геи, лесбиянки, вот это все.
Да пошли они все.
That guy was very blunt. When asked about LGBT, he just said fuck them all. Like, no further explanation, just walks away holding roses for the love of his life, I assume.
Чувак с розами еще ходит.
Решили народное мнение узнать. Как вы считаете? Ну ладно. Это геи, лесбиянки, транссексуалы и так далее. Как
Отрицательно отношусь. Это ненормально. Должно быть.
So the general, by the way, it seems that he's now starting to ask this question about this button being pressed, and if you press it and all gay people disappeared, would you press it? And it seems they all seem to be answering yes. But the thing is, like, it seems to be across basically all societies that if you live in the city, the odds of you being more friendly to queer people are much higher than if you're in the rural communities. If you're younger, the odds of you being more friendly to queer people are much higher than if you're much older. This is true across all societies. It's just some societies are tilted one way or the other more than others. And that's why in Moscow, it was actually easier for him to find people who were like pro-queer, but in this like random village in the middle of nowhere, every single one's like, screw all the gays. They're all bad. They're ending civilization. We need to make them all disappear non-violently. Like that, they're able to like go on these diatribes because like they're like, who's gonna be the person in the village? Be like, yeah, they're okay.
была бы, вот, нажали бы на нее, которая убрала бы всех вот все ЛГБТ из России.
Да, можно было. Все было.
А что в них вот такого ужасного?
Это неестественно.
It's unnatural, it's perverse.
Извращение.
This is Yadrin right here. It's some, I don't know, college. Damn, this looks depressive as hell. It's like the prisons. It's rural Russia.
I gotta say, the thing is about rural Russia, it is true about rural Russia and rural Ukraine that like it's really, really quiet, very small villages a lot of times. But if you got money, I mean, not even a lot of money, you can get like gigantic homes and like tons of property. Tons of property. When I was in Ukraine, I was looking at property prices. I was blown away by like the gigantic properties you can get for very, very like, I wouldn't say small sums of money, but like you can get very, very good living accommodations off the salary of like an American salary for very like a little amount of money. And you know, I'm just a young guy. It's my first time leaving the country for that long of a period. The price difference between Ukrainian goods and American goods just hit me so hard it was impossible for me to believe.
See some old building. It looks very, very nice. These windows, right? But somehow people tend to use these fences, ugly fences. Very ugly.
Okay, it seems that they're done interviewing the people about the law. It isn't that surprising that Russia is continuing down the path of anti-LGBTQ plus bigotry, about them targeting people in this way, but it is kind of a ridiculous law. Like, banning gay people from media and any positive representation? Like, you don't think your nation's adults can deal with seeing a gay person? Like, they just can't? Like, it's too hard for them? Is the mental fortitude of the average Russian so weak that if they just see two guys kiss, they will immediately just get so hot under the collar that they're gonna go out and, like, immediately just start blowing guys? I find it hard to believe. And if that is the case, then that means the tide of homosexuality is an impossible tide. Just like the unstoppable tide of Islam, you know? People talk about the unstoppable tide of Islam. This is the unstoppable tide of homosexuality, man. If that's all it takes. If that's all that takes, man. Silly, but not too unexpected. And while it is silly, it also is terrible. Going to have a terrible effect on LGBTQ plus people. And so while it's funny and we could laugh at it that people would be so scared of queers in media, this is going to have an extremely detrimental impact for the queers who are still within Russia, still trying to survive.